Hello and welcome to another edition of Doorstep History.
First today, Walsall's Museum closed at the end of March of this year due to a £70,000 cut in the budget.
The Museum Service is hoping to obtain a Heritage Lottery Fund grant to combine the collections of the Leather Museum, the Walsall Museum and the local History Centre into one new heritage facility.
But in the meantime, all the collections are housed together in one warehouse. I went to have a look at it.
The Museum and Archive services of Walsall have been reduced over the years, and this year Walsall Museum itself closed and Walsall Local History Centre has had its staff and hours reduced. So a lot of our stuff which reflects the history of Walsall people and the borough is now in storage and we can't display it. So we're looking for a Heritage Lottery bid to expand the existing Leather Museum and create a heritage centre for all of Walsall so that we can display and exhibit the artefacts and the documents which make up the history of Walsall.
So altogether in the collection there are around 15,000 artefacts, which seems quite a lot, doesn't it? So Catherine, you must have some really strange and bizarre things amongst others.
Absolutely, this is one of our strangest and one of our most popular items. This is the Hand of Glory.
The Hand of Glory?
Yes,
okay.
Which was found in the White Hart Inn in Carmer.
Okay, so tell me about this then.
Well, it's actually the preserved arm of a child, which was found up the chimney at the White Hart. It was originally thought to be a Hand of Glory, which is a folklore item. It would be the cut-off hand of a hanged man, and would have been fashioned into a candle holder with the idea that whoever saw the light of this candle would be stunned, and therefore the people with the hand could then go ahead and burgle the house without being disturbed.
So this was once on permanent display in the museum then, was it?
Yes, it was on display in the staircase of the Library and Museum building for many years, and then in about 2005 we had it redisplayed in the Changing Face of Walsall Gallery. It's the preserved arm of a real child, so obviously quite sensitive in nature, but it has always been a real favourite with a lot of our visitors.
Is there any danger that this might rot away or start smelling or something?
We're fairly confident it won't. When it was discovered, it went away for some tests at Birmingham University, and they discovered that it had been preserved in formaldehyde. So it's quite stable. It's also recently been looked at by other experts from Birmingham Museums and Art Gallery, who are fairly sure that it's quite stable as it is.
This is quite a special item. This was Jerome K. Jerome's Red Cross ambulance driver's uniform. Jerome was a famous author, born in Walsall, and during the First World War he was too old to sign up and fight, but he wanted to do his bit, so he volunteered with the French Red Cross. So this is his uniform. So we have his hat and also his tunic with his Red Cross badges here. One of the things we'd like to do if we were to get a new heritage centre would be to display objects and archives together. So we have things like one of Jerome's books, which is autographed by him, and the local history centre also has other archives and letters to do with Jerome, which we'd love to be able to display together.
We seem to have quite a good collection of chairs and things here, haven't we? Look at this really old wheelchair here. Look, this must be a good few years old.
Yeah, we think apparently this one belonged to Sister Dora, our local nursing heroine, who was very much loved by the people of Walsall for all the work she did for the working people, particularly the railway men, who suffered horrible industrial accidents and during the smallpox epidemics as well. So we think this belonged to her. One of the things we'd love to do if we had a heritage centre would be to tell stories of people such as Sister Dora, but in a much more rounded way. So we have the objects here which come from elements of her life, but the local history centre have letters that she wrote and documents pertaining to her career. So displayed together, these fragile items would tell the story of a whole person who is very much beloved by the people of Walsall. I think we've probably got about 4,000 or 5,000 garments. We've got a large single collection which came from one place. That was the Hodson shop in Willenhall, and I think there's probably about 2,500 garments just from that one place alone. This was the unsold shop stock of a local drapery, of which this rail here is the women's dresses. The Hodson shop also had a fantastic collection of overalls and aprons, which would have been worn by local women, either during their work in the factories or doing housework at home. And I think a lot of people will be reminded of their nans and their aunts and whatever wearing these garments. I certainly remember my nan wearing very similar overalls.
Now you seem to have quite a big collection of posters.
Yes, by Walsall Lithographic Company. They did a lot of artwork for companies locally and all over the world. Some of the things we have here would have been used for advertisements in Nigeria. Products from all over the world, all kinds of things, from washing machines to chocolate to tea, but all done by local artists at Walsall Lithographic. So he's not in brilliant condition, but this is the Cadbury bunny, which would have gone with the Bourneville advert. And this was a specialism of Walsall Lithographic, was producing items in card which were also three-dimensional, just to give an extra pop to an advertisement or a point of sale display. These advertisements were just were found in a plan chest, so they've never seen the light of day, so the colours are all really amazing, they're all absolutely pristine. It's another thing that we'd like to display some of, but would really require some good environmental conditions so that they didn't get any damage from light. Another thing which we're unable to do at the moment.
Now, one of my favourite parts of the collection is contained in this box. I wonder if you can work out what it is. It's obviously old and a little bit rusty. It is the remains of a Zeppelin bomb which was dropped on Walsall in 1916. It's always been a favourite with people in the museum, but now it can't be displayed.
We've had it on display in the past and it's suffered from the vibrations of the buildings in the town centre, so we'd need some kind of way of conserving it and having it on display with some real support and environmental controls, which we just don't have at the moment. This is not the only thing which we're unable to display because of conservation concerns. There's textiles and fragile and valuable items which we just can't put on display for fear of what might happen to them.
Now, a lot of the things here are from Willenhall as well, and everybody knows that Willenhall was famous, wasn't it, for locks?
Yes, it was the centre of the British lock trade, thought to be the capital, and exported locks worldwide.
So Walsall's quite well known for its saddlery industry, but there was connections with horses even before that, wasn't there?
Yes, the reason the saddlery industry and the leather industry became so well established in Walsall was because there was an existing lorinry trade. Lorinry means the manufacture of all the metalwork items that go onto a horse, so all of the harness fittings, bits, stirrups and spurs.
So there's lots of social history type stuff here then, isn't there, Catherine? So have you got any particular favourites?
Yes, I'm really quite fond of this TV here. It's a 1950s set, so it probably would have been bought by people wanting to view the coronation. This is one of the Bayard's colts. There's 17 of them altogether, and they are carved wooden poles. Most of them have faces, representations of animals and kings and demons. He's also got a horseshoe on his head. We have absolutely no idea why, but he seems to have a very kindly and good face. Some of the other colts are demonic looking. We think they're at least 300 years old. They're possibly much older. This is one of the original panels from Walsall Illuminations. This is one of the artworks which would have been done by the organisers of the illuminations, and we have a little bit of the sketch work also to go with it. So this would be very, very familiar to a lot of people, a lot of local people who would have gone to the illuminations every autumn, and this has always been too big to display anyway, so the new Heritage Centre, should we get it, we would love to be able to display larger items such as this. We think it would make a really big impact.
And we'll hope to shed some light on the progress of the bid in future programmes.
Hello, welcome back to Doorstep History. Now, exactly 50 years ago, a book that was written was called The Forgotten People, which naturally many people may have forgotten about. But the people of Ladywood certainly haven't, because the book was written by Canon Norman Power, who was a well-known vicar in the area, and the book described the conditions and things that were happening in inner city Ladywood at that time during a great period of slum clearance.
After the war, it became clear that many towns and cities contained large areas of substandard housing which urgently needed to be replaced. Various pieces of government legislation, including the 1944 Town and Country Planning Act, better known as the Blight and Blitz Act, enabled councils to easily purchase war-damaged and slum properties. Birmingham eventually drew up 5 redevelopment areas. Of those areas, Ladywood was the only one to retain its name, because it was said to be a pleasant-sounding name and one rich in historical association. Canon Norman Power, the Vicar of St John's, was well aware that the traditional close-knit community was being broken up and families were being moved to outer suburbs, and he spoke out about the problems that were being created by community disintegration.
And this is the scrapbook that Norman Power used 50 years ago to keep a record of his newspaper cuttings and photographs.
The cuttings showed his concern about the disintegration of the communities, and this led to him producing a book called The Forgotten People.
Although the planners didn't seem to notice or to mind, the disintegration of the community was something that really troubled Norman Power, and as a result his book was quite controversial when it came out, as his brother Alan recalls.
He wrote a book a bit later on called The Forgotten People, which caused quite a stir in Birmingham, all about how all the people were moved away. They started pulling down the little terrace houses and the back-to-back houses. The people were all moved away to other districts. They built a whole lot of these high-rise flats and moved in a completely new lot of people who didn't know each other. And all the doctors had lived in houses in the parish amongst the people. And their surgeries became the sort of parish centres, and the doctors did a tremendous lot to help the people at that time. But then the doctors were all moved out of the district, and the surgeries, they never lived anymore at the surgeries, and they didn't know the people very well at all, and the people didn't know each other. So that was very bad planning. So he wrote his book called The Forgotten People, which stirred things up, made people think a lot, and it was after that that they started planning things a bit better on and trying to make sure that these new districts did become proper communities.
Although he did challenge planners on their methods being used to replan the area, he did like the idea to separate factories from houses, and he also liked the idea of introducing open space to estates. But he often argued that some of the worst housing was being left to last, exacerbating the problems of inner city living. And he also argued that some of the less poor housing ought to be saved and repaired.
When your dad wrote his book about the Forgotten People, how aware were you about what that was all about?
I was really aware. That was when we lived in the new house, of course. I was just aware of buildings getting demolished and Dad getting upset because he didn't think that people had been consulted. You know, he went round with all the planners, looking at all the brilliant new plans. But I remember that bit in his book saying that they'd forgotten something, they'd forgotten the people, forgotten to ask the people what they wanted. And the church community was all sort of torn apart, and families were torn apart and had to live in different parts of Birmingham. So, and there are lots of things that went then. You know, there used to be really good social clubs that we all used to meet, dramatic societies, we used to watch plays.
High-rise blocks became a feature of the landscape, and these, Norman Power argued, only increased the social isolation of the people who were forced to live in them. This was the view from the church tower in October 1965. And as tower blocks became more and more unpopular,
the City Council hit on an ingenious idea. They would name the tower blocks after cathedral cities, and then people would want to live in the new cathedrals of the skies. Truro, Wells, Brecon, Canterbury Towers, for example. And yes, you're right, it didn't make much difference.
By the 1980s, tower blocks had, in general, become social disaster areas, and blocks all over the city were demolished. Much of the demolition was recorded by youngsters from Ladywood's TNT news team.
There's a strange deserted feeling here in Lee Bank as we await the demolition. This could be really exciting. 11,000 sets of explosives, TNT, have been placed on the 16th, 12th, 8th, 5th, 1st and ground floor. The explosives will be detonated on one side first, meaning the tower should tilt slightly before ending in a crumbled heap of dust and rubble. Fingers crossed. So the evacuation is complete and now we wait for the demolition. It's not often you get to stand in the middle of the road like this. TNT have got cameras all over the place and we're going up there. From in the hotel, we couldn't hear the siren, so it caught us by surprise. At least we had the cameras running.
Oh, it's gone. Oh, I missed it.
Bad!
The residential area next to St John's Church on the Gilby Road estate had a number of high-rise blocks which became difficult to let. Once the green light was given, the regeneration plans were drawn up, with local residents giving their opinions through a series of planning workshops. Planners and residents jointly decided what should replace the blocks, which were eventually demolished in stages and a housing estate built.
This is TNT.
Much of the demolition was recorded by youngsters from Ladywood's TNT news team.
Demolition work has started on the Gilby Road estate. TNT was there to watch the bulldozers move in. Planners claimed the flats, built between 1958 and 1960, would be an improvement on the slum dwellings. But 30 years later, they are being demolished to make way for houses. Within minutes of the site being cleared, the demolition people moved in.
The latest phase of Gilby Road's redevelopment is now underway. TNT was there to see the start.
Ladywood's MP at the time was Claire Short, and she was there to help the residents celebrate. One of the cul-de-sacs on the new estate is called Power Crescent, in honour of Norman Power. The name was selected following a local history project that I undertook with the nearby Oratory Primary School.
The current vicar here at St John's strives to keep the community together, just like Norman Power did 50 years ago. So if Norman Power was here now, 50 years on, what do you think he would be saying?
I think he would be delighted in the fact that in the church we have so many different people representing the diversity of Ladywood and across the city. Different ages, people from different countries. We're a church of welcoming, a church of hospitality, and we celebrate being together and celebrating each other's story. So our work, and as we look ahead, is about enabling people to feel that they've got a place, a purpose, and that their story matters.
Norman Power was always concerned with holding the community together and also helping people to contribute to their own community.
And that's what happens here, because we get many people representing different groups who either use our hall or we work in partnership in Ladywood and in fact beyond Ladywood to make a difference. We are one of the partners in the Central Birmingham Food Bank, where many of the gifts today have gone. And we want to enable people here to really feel that they belong, that it's a safe place to live, a lovely place to live. And this will be part of the vision of Canon Norman Power. And we hope that we're doing something towards community cohesion in a city which is so diverse and so young.
I wonder 50 years on from the publication of his book what Norman Power would think of the church and of the community of Ladywood today.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of Doorstep History.
So long, and thanks for watching.